The US Attorney General, Merrick Garland, has announced that the Justice Department will launch an investigation into policing practices in Minneapolis after a former officer was found guilty of the murder of George Floyd. The jury returned a unanimous verdict against Derek Chauvin, who will be sentenced in 2 months' time. Now, there are hopes that the verdict will spark real change in policing practices all over the world, and I'm joined now by Marcia Rigg, sister of Sean Rigg, who died in police custody in Brixton in August 2008. Thanks for sparing the time to speak to us this afternoon. Firstly, what was your reaction, Marcia, when you heard that verdict yesterday?
Well, it was the absolute right decision. Everyone believed their eyes, including the jury. And what we witnessed last year was a murder. And so they came to the right decision. And it will be interesting to see what the actual prison sentence will be. But just one police officer going to prison does not change the systemic patterns that have been happening regarding the use of excessive force, particularly on black men, and using deadly force. But this is also focused on the United Kingdom, where deaths have been happening like such as George Floyd and my brother for decades in this country as well, where excessive force has been used, prone restraints following a mental health crisis, and has used deadly force. And the Metropolitan Police have found that it's not excessive force. How can that be when somebody has died? So this is a real historical moment that the world is watching.
Yes, just remind us, Marcia, what happened to your brother?
Yeah, so Sean was restrained by 4 Brixton police officers in August 2008, which is almost 13 years ago. He was restrained in the prone position, where excessive force was placed at the back of Sean's neck area and shoulder, where there was deep bruising that was found in the medical evidence. And also there was somebody at Sean's feet. He was pinned to the ground, and the jury found that he was in that position for 8 minutes. It was later reconstructed and found to be 7 minutes when it was a criminal investigation. But 7 minutes is still too long. And that caused a lack of oxygen to go to Sean's brain, which caused an arrhythmia and a cardiac arrest. There was no drugs or alcohol in Sean's system whatsoever. He was only having a psychotic episode. He was fit and healthy. He had no problems with his heart. He did not have a heart attack. In fact, he died the same way that George Floyd died. And many other deaths, like Christopher Alder, Roger Sylvester, Mikey Powell, Kingsley Burrell, Rashan Charles, Joy Gardner. There are so many other deaths, Adrian McDonald, Mark Coe, where they have died as a result of excessive force and prone restraint. And we've also had the Angelini Review in 2017, where the government looked at mental health and policing and to look at all of these issues, which found that there were over 100 recommendations. And to this day, we still have not all of those, we've still not had those recommendations implemented.
And it is more than a decade since you had to go through this tragedy. Do you feel any improvements have been made? I know after Sean's case, CCTV was put into the back of police vans, for example. There was a great deal of talk about how those with mental health issues are being looked after when they go into custody. Do you feel that any changes for the better were made?
Well, the fact is that the deaths are actually still happening. We recently saw the inquest of Kevin Clark. Well, Kevin Clark also suffered with mental health, was in a crisis. He was restrained by up to 9 police officers. And the use of body-worn cameras showed that he said that he couldn't breathe on a number of occasions, and he died on camera. And that was, years after Sean, 10 years after Sean died. So what actually did change? There's so many other deaths as well. So there are negotiations, and the government and the police and the federation are all saying, and they are doing reviews and more reviews and reports, but there's no real effective change.
So what would you like to see? Yeah, what would you like to see practically? If you could give a list of things that you feel need to change immediately, what would be on that list?
Well, we need to change the inquest system, because if your loved one dies in police custody, for instance, what families have is an inquest system which just is not a criminal jurisdiction, and it's just to find out how that person died. Families are not afforded an unlimited purse, as the police receive unlimited funds from the public first to fund such investigations. And I'm sure it has cost the public purse millions of pounds. And the officers have always walked away free. We've not seen a conviction when there has been a death in custody, when a jury at an inquest has found that the actions of officers more than minimally contribute to their death. Now, we do know that mental health does not kill you, but restraint does. And so this case that we've just seen in America is very important globally, and it also reflects exactly what needs to happen in the United Kingdom. I'd also like to take the opportunity to send my solidarity to George's family from all of the families in the United Kingdom. In fact, from everybody in the United Kingdom. We stand in solidarity. We saw that a pandemic could not stop the protests after the death of George Floyd, and we have now seen his murderer convicted. That's what we need to see, so that there is a clear message sent to police officers that they are not above the law.
Marcia, in the last hour or so, we've heard that the US Attorney General has launched an investigation into police tactics in Minneapolis. You must welcome that move.
Absolutely, it is the right move. But it's another report, it's another review. And so I do welcome that. I welcome that the president has spoken as well on this issue. And that investigation should be transparent and robust and thorough. And we do need to see justice. But it's the same as the Angelina review. We had an investigation like that in 2017. We have still not been afforded the implementations of those recommendations. There were over 100 recommendations. What's changed 3 years later? I hope that this shed light on that as well.
Of course, of course. Well, we appreciate your time. Marcia Rigg, sister of Sean Rigg, thank you so much. Good to get your thoughts following that result yesterday. Thank you.
Thank you for having me.